Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Career Talk with OG. Today's guest is a longtime friend, Eddie Garcia. By the way, Eddie, we might need to do a DNA test, or what is it, that family history, because we might be like long, cousins, or I don't know. You might be my tío or something like that, right?
There's so many Garcias, though, Oscar. I think we're all related.
Yeah, exactly. But everyone, today, again, my guest is mi amigo Eddie Garcia. He has a beautiful, powerful, faith-filled story that he's going to share with us today. And a little bit of background on Eddie. He is the author of Summer in the Waiting Room. We're going to get into and talk about his book and how this came about. Eddie is a leadership and life coach. And a long time ago when we met, if I'm not mistaken, Eddie, I think at the time you were working with Comcast, and I was like working in downtown San Jose.
Yeah, I think you're the president of the chamber. No, you were
Yeah, well, I was.
before that.
I
That's
was
right.
but before that, even further than
Yes, I do remember now. Yes,
so, Eddie, bienvenido. Thank
thank
you so
you.
much for being on Career Talk with OG.
Thank you, Oscar. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. You've got a great show and you have a great business, and just keep giving the ganas out there helping people, man.
Thank
So do
you.
your thing.
Thank you. But Eddie, for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, because this is also going to go on our podcast, please share with us. Take us back a little bit and talk to us about just whether you want to share a little bit about your career or your upbringing and bring us to the present.
Okay, well, it kind of all melds into one at the end of the day. So I grew up in East San Jose. I'm an East San Jose boy,
Whoop, whoop.
and I have a blog that's called the essayreport.com, and essay is Eastside Eddie.
Yeah.
So it's got a couple of meanings there. But I grew up in a very I think a typical Mexican American household from the 60s and 70s.
Mm.
My parents I was number 5 of 6. There were 3 boys and 3 girls. We were like the Mexican Brady Bunch. For those old enough to understand what that is. And, we didn't have a lot growing up. My parents worked really hard to put food on the table, and it sounds like a cliche, but a roof over our heads. And
Yeah.
we always had good food to eat. In hindsight, you're going to find out later, maybe too good. Uh, but outside of that, we didn't have a whole bunch. But we had each other, and it was a great way to grow up. And so from my childhood all the way through high school, I didn't have a care in the world. I
Mm.
was a really good student. I was a little athlete. I played little league baseball, middle school basketball. In high school, I played varsity baseball and varsity basketball. I was captain of both teams senior year. I was living the life.
Yes.
And then when I graduated, I got into San Jose State. So again, things are going well for me. And then the world hit me with boom, boom,
Mm.
punch, punch. Uh,
Mm.
I didn't do well in school. I was intimidated back in 1981 at San Jose State. There weren't that many brown faces.
Yes.
I was totally intimidated. I remember jumping on the bus, going down Allen Rock Avenue to Santa Clara Street to go to school,
Yeah.
feeling totally out of place. So I ended up, drinking with my buddies and chasing women. And I had a girlfriend at the time too, by the way. She didn't go to college, and so I spent way more time with my friends and my girlfriend than I did with school. And ultimately, I flunked out. I got disqualified.
Wow.
Shortly thereafter that, the girlfriend hit me with the second punch. She dumped me. Now I'm about 20, maybe 19, 20, and totally lost in the world. And I went into this deep, dark tunnel of despair. I mean, my life I thought was a party, and that's all I did.
Yeah.
Didn't pay attention to anything else. Things got worse and worse. And finally, I woke up and said, okay, this is not good. And then fortunately, another woman comes into play, my current wife, who essentially said, "Hey, you're way too talented to be doing what you're doing." This was before she was my wife,
Yes.
and I shall tell you how tough she is. Sandra's an amazing woman. When I finally asked her to get married, because I was all in love, right?
Yeah.
She said, "Okay, sounds good, but you got to finish college." So I went back, finished, graduated on the dean's list, and decided at that moment that I was never ever going to fail again, Oscar.
Yeah.
I made a commitment to myself, never to fail again. And so I worked harder than anybody else that I can imagine. And things were going really well. I was moving up in my career. I started as a political aide. I went to go work for, I don't know if anybody remembers TCI Cable back in
Oh yes, yes. You're
as a
taking me way back, Eddie. You're taking me way
yeah,
back.
as a manager. Ultimately became Comcast, and I became a VP of government affairs for California.
Yeah.
So I rose out of the dust and became an executive at a major corporation, and got appointed to the Eastside Junior High School District Board of Trustees. Served
Hmm.
as board president. Did some great stuff there. I'm on top of the world, and then boom,
Wow.
I had a heart attack.
Oh, geez.
Massive heart attack. Doctors didn't think I was going to survive the night. I did, obviously. And that was the best part of that episode because it got worse.
Oh
I
man.
went into cardiac arrest. My heart stopped. Um, After that happened, my lungs quit working. Doctors had to medically induce me into a coma,
Hmm.
give my body a chance to rest so they can work on my lungs. My heart's very weak. In addition to the coma, they gave me paralytic medicine so my body didn't move. I could totally rest.
Yeah.
And I was like that for about 6 weeks.
Wow.
My family, uh, man, they bore the brunt of it. I was asleep, right?
Yeah.
I was just kicking back while doctors were working on me. So 6 weeks later, I wake up. I can't move anything, literally nothing. I had to relearn how to move, how to talk. I couldn't eat because my throat muscles had fallen asleep.
Hmm.
I had to relearn how to do all those things. And finally, in September of that year, 106 days later, came home. That was in 2010.
106 days later.
Yes. I walked into my house with a walker, and it was the greatest feeling in the world, Oscar. It was
Oh
amazing.
my gosh,
And
Eddie.
I spent the next 10 years, that was 2010, the next 10 years living with what's called congestive heart failure. And what that
Hmm.
means is that your heart can't pump enough blood
Yes.
into your body.
Yep.
And I managed it with medicine,
Hmm.
exercise, and a really strict diet.
Hmm.
And right around 2018, which was year 8 into the heart failure, my heart started to give out.
Mm.
And doctors put me through this process to see if I can get on a heart transplant list,
Hmm.
which I got on. But it was
Yeah.
kind of good news, bad news, right? Because the good news was, hey, Mr. Garcia, you're on the list. The bad news is we don't know how long it's going to take to find a perfect match. It could take a
Sure.
day, it could take 5 years,
Wow.
and your heart has a few months left in it.
Yes.
So there's a technology that actually attaches a titanium pump to your heart. Think about that. That's kind of amazing.
Wow.
And it attaches a titanium pump to the bottom of your heart, and it's run by electricity. So the heart, the pump is connected by a wire that goes through my body. I got a little hole here. I
Yeah.
like to tease people and say, hey, I got shot when I was a kid, but I didn't. It was a bullet hole, right? And it came out of the side plugged into a computer and some batteries. And I was like that for 17 months.
Woo.
And then so finally God said, okay, we're going to give you another chance at this. And on April 16th, 2020, I got a heart transplant.
Oh my gosh, you made it. You got it.
So here I
Uh,
am, and I wrote a book about it. And that's what Summer in the Waiting Room was all about.
wow. And we'll get into more deeper into your book, your story here, Eddie. But so far, I mean, you know, going back to what you described at your childhood, that you were grew up in the east end of San Jose, just enjoying living a good life, right? Doing what you know you wanted to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, because right, as a parent, we want to give our kids the best experience, the best life, right? And um, and then, as you said, you're in college and you experience failure, right? And then, the breakup of the relationship, and that, like you described that, 1-2, punch to the gut. I I want to talk a little bit here about failure, because none of us wants to fail. But I also believe that out of every adversity, there's a seed of equal or greater benefit that comes from it. And so, Eddie, when you look back at that experience, your first time in college, what what are some of the things that you did to help you bounce back up, and ultimately, like you said, you were on the dean's list?
So that's a great question, Oscar. And failure is at the core of my story, right? Failure is at the core of my story. I have failed more than most people can imagine failing.
Mm,
And I've failed in some pretty big ways, and I'll explain that in a second. So we'll start with the college failure. Uh, you know, I grew up in a Catholic family,
mm-hmm.
and my mom was very faithful. For her, it was all about si Dios quiere, and con el
Mm-hmm.
favor de Dios, right?
Yes, yes,
God willing, and if God wants it this way, right?
sure.
It's all going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side was my dad. My dad was work hard, play by the rules, and treat other people like you want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
Real hard, just hard. Well,
Yes.
when I was a kid, a young adult, it was hard to understand my mom's worldview, because that
Yeah.
was like way out there, like, oh, God's will take care of it. And I
Yeah.
kind of understood my dad's work hard, right?
Sure.
Other rules, you're going to get there.
Yeah.
So when I flunked out of college, I'll never forget the day that I had to tell my parents.
Mm,
I raced to the mailbox every day waiting for the letter because I knew it was coming. There
yeah.
was no email or anything those days.
Yes. Yes.
So I knew it. I just knew it. Gut wise, I knew it.
Yes.
And that day, my mom met me at the mailbox, and she had the letter. And she says, "Oh, this is from San Jose State." And I
Mm-hmm.
said, "Oh, okay, thanks, Mom." She says, "Well, what is it?" And I hemmed and hawed for a couple of days, and she kept asking, "What is it?" It's unopened. So I opened it, read it, and I told both of my parents. And my mom says, "Don't worry, mijo. It's all going to work out. You're going to be okay. God's going to take care of this. You're going to be fine." My dad, not happy, right? My dad, my
Yeah.
dad, my dad didn't believe in corporal punishment. He had worse punishment. He played with your mind, and he had this look. It's like kind of like this, right? He had this look, and then he shook his head in disapproval when you didn't do something well, right?
Yeah.
Playing little league and missing a ground ball, and I could see him up in the bleachers like this, right? So that's the look he gave me, and it crushed me, Oscar. It just crushed me, right?
Of course.
So at that moment, before I got out of the dark days, when I finally emerged and said, "Okay, I got to stop feeling sorry for myself," rather than going with my mom's, "God's going to help me through this," I went with
Yeah.
my dad's, and I
Sure.
worked hard.
Mm,
I worked really hard. So how I went from flunking out to getting back in to Dean's List was just outworking everybody. I got to class early. I sat in the front row,
yes.
right? I listened and took notes, and I'm not a note taker, but I took notes, and I read everything that was assigned to me, and I did, writing assignments and essays ahead of schedule. I just worked really hard. So,
Mm-hmm.
so that gave me the confirmation that my dad is right.
Yes.
So that's how I got out of that mess. And
Yes.
so I think that would work for almost anybody, Oscar. That's the formula.
Yes.
But then life decided to intervene along the way.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
so,
Yes.
so, so let me tell you what. So I'm working my way up the corporate ladder, the same way I worked my way through college, working harder than anybody else. And I decided I wanted to serve in public office.
Mm.
So in 1996, I ran for a school board seat, an elementary school board seat, and lost by a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I just dusted myself off. In 1998, I did it again and lost by a little bit less. Right, so
Yeah.
that's two failures now. We're looking, okay, the college failed up until age 17. I was,
Everything's good. Everything's good.
I was my brothers and sisters like to not believe this, but I was the golden boy. All right, everything was good. In high school, I was the big man on campus, captain of the varsity baseball basketball
Yeah.
team. Yeah, and then in a matter of a short time, getting dumped, flunking out of school, and then I get through that, and then I lose my first campaign and lose my second campaign.
Oh,
So what
jeez.
do I do, Oscar? I'm gonna work harder than anybody else. I decide to take a leap of faith and run for a city council race in San Jose.
Ándale. Ándale. Look at you.
And there was in the primary election there were four of us, three school board members and me, and I got into the general election. So I beat two school board members,
Yeah.
and they got crushed in the general election. Another loss on my belt, right? Another failure.
Yeah.
And then I decided, to concentrate on my career, and that's when I started moving up the ladder. And uh, that was my formula. That was it. Just work harder than anybody else.
Sure.
And I ultimately got appointed to a school board seat. And then get this, Oscar. In 2008, I get appointed in 2006, and in 2008, I'm an incumbent with a really good record, run for election, and lose.
Oh my gosh. Oh my
And then
God.
get reappointed again. So here's where the faith, open, love come in. So I get reappointed in 2008. In 2009 and early 2010, I got elected to president of the board. I'm leading the charge on a lot of issues. One of my proudest moments is leading the charge on something called A through G, which is a requirement to get into UC.
Yes. Yes. I remember A2Gs. Yes.
Yes, and it was a really great help to students of color
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because the school district, if this a policy were passed, would require the school district to have them take college prep courses.
Yes.
So
Yes.
here back on top of the world again, rocking and rolling.
Yes.
And then 3 months before applying for re-election, I have the heart attack.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And,
That.
and, and
Yeah.
talk about my mom here, right? Let's talk about my
Yep.
mom. Si Dios quiere, con el favor de Dios. Literally a few days, about a week before I'm ready to register for re-election, I emerged from the coma.
Mm.
And working with my wife Sandra, we draft a Facebook message saying that I'm not running for office.
Yeah.
And so it just all, with my new faith, it all makes sense.
Yes.
God said, I'm gonna make it disastrous for you. I'm going to put you through all kinds of trials and tribulations, but I'm gonna save you,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but not so you could be a politician.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
message I got.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, it's so work hard, play by the rules, and treat others like you want to be treated are great rules that everyone should follow. But I think they become secondary to having faith, hope, and love,
Yeah.
because my mom was right, and
Yeah.
both my parents passed away. But I wish I could just hug my mom and say, you were right, you were right, you were right."
Yes. Well, and Eddie, I mean, both my parents have passed away too, as well. I think you know this. I sometimes talk about this on LinkedIn on some of my posts, and for me, the older I get, the wiser my parents get, because I reflect on the things that they said, and really, quite frankly, I reflect more on the things that they did, because my parents weren't the type to sit down around the dinner table and have conversations with my brother and I about life, and that just, they weren't like that. They were typical blue collar workers, and so forth. But I learned many things from my parents through observation and now through reflection of how they handle certain things. And it's I my dad, I mean, you in a way, your parents, the way you describe your parents remind me of my parents, because my dad was also a workaholic. That's what he knew, to do, to work very hard. He wasn't very much a person of faith until he got older. And when I'm older, meaning, in the senior years, and my mom was always more, very, very much like your mom, see those kids, it's always, see those kids, if God wants, wants it to happen, it will. And as I'm listening to your story, for me, what one of the things that I get out of your story so far is that God is not done with you, my friend. He has a bigger plan for you, um, bigger stage, or whatever it is that we want to call it, for you to truly make an impact. Because it's true. Sometimes we see a certain career path or a certain path of a way to make a difference, and we realize, like, later on, we realize, like, oh my gosh, this path I've been able to make, or I was able to make such a greater difference. Um, yeah, that's what I see, Eddie. For you, Eddie, when today, when it if when you are mentoring, speaking to a professional, someone that's been in their career for, say, 15, 20 plus years, um, and basically a seasoned professional, what advice do you give that person? Let's say they're in their mid 40s, right? So they've got another 15, or I don't know, 20, maybe 15 or so years to go until maybe your traditional retirement. Um, what advice would you give that professional in order for them to be happy, achieve that work-life balance, and at the same time, you know, get the most out of their career?
Oscar, again, my worldview has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And if you would ask me this 14 years ago, I would say work as hard as you can,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
and that's still there. But you're talking about a seasoned person,
Yeah.
right? And there's we've heard this phrase before: work smart rather than working.
Yeah.
So because of my journey and because of my let me tell you the spiritual part of my journey. Um, So I'm in it's called the step down unit in 2010. That's the unit. You got a regular room, you got step down, and you got ICU.
Mm.
So when you graduate from ICU, like you're not on the verge of death, you go into something called step down.
Got it.
And in the step down unit is when I first really started becoming clear in my mind, because all the sedatives had gone away, and I felt awful. I felt my life was over. This is, because here's the workaholic here, right?
Yes.
And I can barely move. At that time, I could barely move my hands, maybe an inch or two off the bed.
Wow.
And I was really despondent and depressed. So we called, my wife Sandra called our friend, who's a Catholic Monsignor, and he was out of town. So the hospital chaplain came in, and she started talking to me about faith and gratitude and all this other stuff. And I got to be honest, this is what I heard: blah 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 blah. Okay,
Mm.
right, sure, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so after she left, I want to say in the next day or two, I started improving by leaps and bounds.
Yes.
And they took the tube out of my throat, and I had something called a trach collar, which was sending air through
Oh,
here.
yeah.
And
Yes.
then I learned how to say a few words, and I was like raspy, and things were moving really quickly. And I asked the ICU doctor, what did he do? And he said, I've done all the protocols I need to do. There's something bigger here.
Mm.
And I really, literally could feel my mom's warmth when he said that.
Yeah.
I thought, holy goodness gracious, right? And so after that summer, and I started writing my blog, and I started doing a lot of research to write the book. I went deep into my faith to figure out what does this all mean? Because I'm a bookworm.
Yes.
My mom was Faith. My wife Sandra, oh, man, she's just like my mom, Faith. But I gotta know. Give me some evidence. Right? What's going on? So I read Bible passages. I read the daily mass. And I did research on all the stuff I read, right, for the book to understand this. And it came down to me to one thing, 3 words: faith, hope, love. And that's a reference to St. Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, where he says, no matter what happens in the world, we always have faith, hope, and love.
Yes.
And love is the greatest of the 3, right?
Yes. Yes.
So I did a whole bunch of research on what those words meant.
Yes.
So here it is, Oscar, and I'm going to answer your question about what would I tell a mid-level professional, right?
Yes.
Is whether you're religious or not. And I don't think I'm religious. I'm still the same Catholic kid I was years ago, but I understand a lot more now.
Sure.
And I'm very spiritual, right?
Sure.
So let's say for argument's sake, you're not. And let's look at those 3 concepts: faith, hope, and love, right? And that's how I try my life now. Faith is a real simple concept. It's believing in something bigger than yourself.
Yep.
Right?
Believing in something bigger than yourself. Yep.
For me, it's God, but it could be anything for anybody. But what also comes along with faith is acceptance. Because once you believe there's something bigger than yourself, then you have to accept what you can't control.
Yes. And that's a hard thing. That's a hard thing, especially when you're climbing the corporate ladder and you're in a corporate environment.
That's really hard to do, right? And so the first thing I would say is you got to have faith. You got to accept what you can't control. You can't control when you're sitting in your office on Friday at 2:00 and you've scheduled dinner with your family and you're ready to get out of Dodge, and boom, you get an email saying, we need you to fill out this spreadsheet by end of business today.
Yeah.
So here's what most people do, because that's what I did. First, I sat there staring at the computer, cussing out whoever sent me that email. That's a good 15, 30 minutes, right?
Yes.
And then what you do is you start calling your colleagues. Can you believe that email? Blah, blah, blah. Another 15, 30 minutes. And then I call my wife, Sandra, to tell her I'm going to be late. Hour, right? That's an hour.
Yeah.
There you work again and work up first.
Yeah.
And so everything goes haywire. And now it's 5:30, 6:00. And so you say, shit, I got to do the thing. And you're done by 7 and you're home late and you're all wound up and Sandra's upset and the kids are upset and
Yep.
Just accept that you got the email, you can get to work.
Yes.
Accept what you can't control.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You can't control corporate budget cuts. You can't control the media. You can't control your cantankerous coworker. You can't control that. Yes. Once you accept that, then you can get to work. That's faith.
Yep.
Hope. Here's what St. Paul says about hope. Hope starts with rejoicing in suffering. Have you ever rejoiced in your suffering, Oscar? No.
Yeah. Really? No way.
Right. So here's what he means by this, because it starts with suffering always. Something's gone bad. So let's take it away from the spiritual to the workplace. Something just went bad. You got that crazy email.
Yeah.
Rather than get upset about, rejoice in it. Okay, I got the email, right? Because rejoicing in suffering leads to endurance and perseverance. And you stick with it no matter what. And then that leads to character.
Yes.
And so once you have the character, then you can get moving forward on solutions.
Yes.
That's hope. So suffering plus endurance plus character equals hope.
Yes.
And so when I was in the hospital and I was faced with that moment where I can't talk, I can't move, I can't do anything, I had to endure a lot.
Yep.
Right? And it built character. I got stronger as a human being. I got stronger because it was about my daughters and my wife that I had to do this. And then I had hope. Like, okay, I can get out of this mess.
Yes.
Right? So that's your faith, hope, and then love. There's a book, you ought to read a book. It's called The 4 Loves by C.S. Lewis.
Okay. All right.
C.S. Lewis wrote a book called The 4 Loves in 1960. And he goes over what he considers the four loves, like friendship, family, romantic love, right? And the fourth love is which he calls charity, which is the
Yeah.
biblical definition of love, which is giving of yourself for the service of others.
I've heard. Is it similar to what's it called?
Agape.
Agape love? Yes.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Yes.
Agape. The definition of agape, because agape is the biblical word that it's a Greek word for love.
Yes.
And agape is giving yourself for the service of others.
Yes.
So that's the formula. If someone says, I'm in a rut, Eddie, how do I move forward? I would say you move forward with faith, hope, and love.
Yeah.
Accept that you can't control, endure, and build character, and give to others. You
Yes.
do those three things, I think you're going to find happiness, you're going to find focus, you're going to find purpose in your life.
Yes.
And that's kind of how I live my life today. That's it. When the world hits, because the world hits,
It does. Yes,
right?
it does.
I'll tell you one thing, because you get a new heart and a new lease on life doesn't mean the world doesn't stop hitting, because it hits.
Right. Right. Right.
And when things get really hard, and they do, because managing a transplant is almost a full-time job. It's not a cure. It just comes with a whole set of other issues and other problems.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so when those things hit, I have faith, I have hope, and I have love, and then it's much. And that's how. If I had to go back, which I don't, we can't go back.
Nope.
But if I managed my career that way, I may or may not have been in the position I'm in.
Sure.
And I still think I would have accomplished everything I accomplished.
Yeah. Well, in what you just described is in very simple terms. It's not easy to do, of
No,
course. It's not
no.
easy to do. It takes work, but it's a simple, to use corporate terminology, it's a simple formula. It's to remember faith, hope, and love. Um, and like you said, uh, stuff will happen. It will happen to all of us. And sometimes during my trainings, I tell people, if you've been living a good life, good for you. But don't worry about it, because your boat's coming. And not that I wish anything negative. I don't wish anything negative. It's just the cycle of life, right? The journey of life, up and down, up and down. And I love how you break this down with faith, and as you mentioned about hope, and enduring that suffering but building that character when you're in that valley. And then of course excuse me, the love, right? The unconditional love of giving yourself to others. And when I look back at your story that you shared with us today, Eddie, I see these three elements throughout your life. It just seems that it took obviously some tragic situations, some failures, in order for you to reach back over and to what your mom kept telling you, and now incorporate those things into this work ethic that your dad instilled in you. Because when you have what your dad and your mom instilled, then I mean, look at you today. Look at you today. Look at the
Here.
impact. Yeah. Look at the impact that you're having. Look at the lives today that you're touching. Look at the speaking opportunities that are coming, before you, and the lives that you're impacting. And many times, and I tell you this from my own personal experiences, many times we don't even know whose lives we're impacting until maybe one day we get a message through LinkedIn, email, or however, and it's like, Mr. Garcia, with that talk
Yeah.
that you did for us at Comcast, I don't know if you remember, but and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, wow. And it's God working through you, my friend, to continue to positively influence and impact other people.
Well, thank you, Oscar. Thank you. I do believe that. I do. I did it before.
Mm-hmm.
I was so focused on career building.
Yeah.
And I might have been doing those things subconsciously.
Sure.
But I wasn't doing it in an intentional way.
Yeah.
And now that's the advice I would give people is do that in an intentional way.
Yeah. I see you today, Eddie, into the future. You said, you were, career building. Today, I see you people building. And then also I see you sharing your faith, giving hope to others, and spreading your love to others is what I see you doing today. And
Well,
into the
thank you,
future.
Austin. That's what I hope to do.
Yeah, no. Eddie, before we wrap up, I mean, if you're okay with it, if you're comfortable, share with us your heart transplant, story. Because my my father, I don't think I told you this, or I've ever told you this, but my father also had a heart attack as well. He never had a heart transplant. He did end up with a pacemaker a few years later in his older life. And I was there with my dad to translate for him, and so forth.
Yeah.
So I have experiences that way, okay, and I hope that's the only way that I have experience, obviously. But share with us a little bit about your story. When you are there, you get the news that there's a heart for you, and then going through that process of receiving the heart transplant.
Yeah, that was that was very interesting. I want to preface everything Oscar was saying that heart disease is the number one killer in the United States. It's the number one killer in the world.
Mm,
Cancer gets all the press, as it should, because cancer is an awful disease.
sure.
But and cancer is almost not preventable. Heart disease is mostly preventable.
Kind of.
Right?
Okay.
Mostly preventable, and it's
Sure.
the biggest killer. And it's diet, it's exercise, and it's having a stress-free life.
Yeah.
There's for your viewers and listeners, go to the American Heart Association website, and there's something called the 8 Essentials on how to take care of your heart and yourself.
Sure.
And you think faith, hope, and love is hard? That is really hard, because you're going to say, "What? I'm not going to do that," but it could save your life.
Sure.
So here's I'm watching The Voice with my wife Sandra and my youngest daughter Eddie, right? And you got to have your cell phone on at all times when you're on the list, because a call could come at any moment.
Sure.
And here's a funny aside: I was eating a little cup of vanilla ice cream, which is probably not a good idea, right? So the phone call comes. It's my doctor. 9:30 at night. I said, "Ooh, this is it. This has to be. Why would she be calling at 9:30 at night, right?"
Yeah.
So I pick up the cell phone, and it's her, and she says, "We found a match. You're going to get a call from Stanford in about an hour, and they'll tell you what to do next."
Wow.
And then she says, "Do you have any questions?" And so I sheepishly say, "I'm eating a bowl of ice cream. Can I finish?" And she starts laughing. She starts laughing. She says, "Eddie, finish your ice cream," right? So here's it. I get to Stanford. This is at the beginning of the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
So my book, Summer in the Waiting Room, is all about my family and the support system I had that year in 2010.
Yeah.
My wife and my daughter Erika kiss me at the curb and say, "See you later," because they can't go in.
Sure.
So I walk into this big hospital. It's cavernous. It's cold. It's empty. With a security guy. They prep me. They do everything. Give me some meds to relax. I fall asleep for about an hour or two. They wake me up and say, "Hey, your heart's here."
Mm-hmm.
So like, whew, okay, showtime. And I
Wow.
wasn't as nervous as I thought, and probably because of the meds. So we
Yeah.
get into the operating room, and people are working all around me, and I'm kind of going in and out, but I'm conscious. And just before they completely put me to sleep, I see a face, and by this time it's fuzzy, and it's
Yeah.
this blonde, wispy hair young man with this beautiful smile saying, "Mr. Garcia, my name's Dr. MacArthur. Your heart's here. We'll see you in a little bit."
Wow.
Poof! Everything goes black. Right? So about 20 seconds later, I see the same face. 20 seconds later, but my wife says closer to 11 hours. But
Yeah. Okay.
20 seconds later, I see the same face, the same bright smile, super confident, say, "Mr. Garcia, you have a new heart, and you have a Ferrari in your chest. It's working great." Um, and that was it. That was it. That the recovery was really hard. Heart transplant recovery is really, really hard. The hardest part is the mental and emotional part.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You would think that you got a new lease in life, you're on top of the world, right?
Of course, yes.
But the way my doctor described it is they take out the main engine of your body. They
Yeah,
take it out, and your
yeah.
body freaks out. And then they introduce something completely foreign and different, and your body freaks out again.
Yeah.
So your chemicals are so messed up. I read a stat like 62% of heart transplant recipients end up with a severe case of anxiety and depression within the first 5 years.
Oh, okay. I didn't know this. Okay.
And mine was bad. My first year was physically I was doing well because I had a Ferrari, but mentally whew, it was really hard.
Mm, my gosh, Eddie. And mira, today, at least,
Yeah.
from what I see here, I mean, look at now I'm looking at a big smile here in front of my screen here, your smile here. And like I said, what you are doing with your story, how you're, helping all of us. And in fact, actually, we have some comments here, from Armando earlier. He says, "Somos más allá que seres físicos, hermosa historia." Roberto here says, "Thank you. As a job seeker, this was good to hear." I'm telling you, Eddie, your story, you're impacting people that you don't even know you're positively impacting. And I want to thank you for being on Career Talk with OG. I know it took us several months to do this. I've been looking forward to having you here, listening to your story. I've learned so much about you, but also you've helped me also um, self-reflect on my own personal, professional, entrepreneurial journey, and to really, really cherish the moments of people that we have around us, because one never knows when that, in that instant your life can just change the way it has. And as I've said before, our test can one day be our testimony, and you've been tested multiple times, my friend. Thank you for the courage. Thank you for the faith, the hope, the love to share your story with us, Eddie. Any final words that you want to share with us?
Just a couple of thank yous, Oscar. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for you've got a great platform here, and you are helping way more people in the work you do every day. And I was just really excited for the opportunity to be here on with you. Plus, you're a great conversationalist. It's always fun talking to you. So thank you for that, and also thank you for the encouragement. You had mentioned something earlier about God having bigger plans for me or a bigger stage, and I'm okay with the little stage. If I can help one person at a time, that's cool with me. But at the end of the day, uh, I have faith, so I just accept I can't control what God has in store for me. I'm just going to go with it. Uh, and I want everybody listening to think about those three words: faith, hope, and love.
Yeah.
They can, if you're religious and you're spiritual, those are super powerful. If you're not, they're super powerful as well, because the meaning behind them can make all the difference in your life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you, Eddie. Eddie, one last thing I want to tell you, okay? Because you said that you're okay with the small stage. Remember, Moses was also happy hiding behind that burning bush, but God had a bigger plan for him. Prepárate, amigo, because you're going to be speaking to 10,000 people one day on the stage. I believe
Thank
it.
you, Oscar. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today again on Career Talk with OG. Again, we've dropped in the Angelica, my daughter. She does a fabulous job behind the scenes in the comments. Connect with Eddie. She dropped his LinkedIn URL. There you see it across the screen. His Instagram account too as well, eddie.m.garcia. And then also there we go. Angelica also has the essay report. Okay. And then, of course, Eddie's book as well. Please get his book to Summer in the Waiting Room. A very beautiful story filled with faith, hope, and love. So thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful rest of the week. Bye-bye.
See ya.